The following afternoon, Gloria arrived at the mansion as usual. She had barely stepped through the front door when Lucille appeared from the hallway. For the first time in weeks, neither of them seemed in a hurry to leave. "Good afternoon," Gloria said. "Good afternoon." Lucille searched Gloria's face without making it obvious. "I hope I didn't put you in an uncomfortable position yesterday." "You didn't." Gloria smiled faintly. "I just needed time to think." Lucille nodded. There was a brief silence before Gloria spoke. "I'd like to have dinner with you." Lucille blinked once, almost as though she hadn't expected the answer after all. "I am glad," she said with a quiet smile. "So am I." They shared an awkward laugh that eased some of the tension between them as Lucille's shoulders relaxed. "I'll pick you up tomorrow evening, if that works for you." "It does." 7. "I'll be ready." Lucille watched her quietly from where she stood. It wasn't simply relief she felt. It was hope. Small enough that she was almost afraid to acknowledge it. For the first time since the rainy afternoon, tomorrow was no longer something she wanted to avoid. She found herself looking forward to it. The following evening arrived with clear skies. Gloria stood in front of the mirror fastening the buttons of a light cream blouse. She reached for a jacket out of habit, then paused. A small smile crossed her face. She folded it over her arm instead. A knock sounded at the apartment door. Celine looked up from the dining table. That must be her. Gloria nodded, suddenly aware of how quickly her heart had begun to beat. Lucille stood outside holding a small bouquet of white lilies. She wore the black blazer Gloria had come to associate with her, though tonight it seemed less like a shield and more like part of the woman herself. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lucille held out the flowers. Gloria looked at the lilies before looking back at her. "You remembered." "I know they're your favorite." A warmth spread quietly through Gloria's chest. She accepted the bouquet carefully. "Thank you. They suit you better than roses." The remark escaped before Lucille had time to consider it. She gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. "I suppose that sounded strange." Gloria laughed softly. "A little." Lucille looked away with a faint shake of her head. "I'm not very good at this." Gloria's smile softened. "I have noticed." For the first time in days, the laughter they shared came easily. It stayed with them all the way to the car. The restaurant overlooked a quiet lake at the edge of the city. Warm lights reflected gently across the water beyond the windows, and low conversations blended with the soft music playing in the background. After they had ordered, a comfortable silence settled between them. Lucille rested her hands around the cup of tea the waiter had brought. "I've been thinking about that afternoon." Lucille drew a slow breath. "I don't think I've stopped thinking about it." Gloria lowered her eyes to the lilies resting beside her chair. "I was hoping you had." "I couldn't." Lucille's voice remained quiet. "I kept remembering the look on your face." Gloria smiled without amusement. "I was mortified." "I know. I thought I'd ruined everything." Lucille shook her head. "You didn't." Gloria looked at her searchingly. "Then why did everything change?" Lucille did not answer immediately. She had asked herself the same thing countless times. "Because I didn't know what to do. I've spent so long believing that certain doors should stay closed." Lucille's fingers tightened slightly around her cup. "When I realized how you felt, I was afraid." "Of me?" "Not you." Lucille met her eyes. "Of what those feelings meant." The honesty in her voice left little room for misunderstanding. Gloria looked out across the lake for a moment before speaking again. I thought your words on the balcony meant you wanted me to move on. Lucille's expression fell. I know. I didn't understand that until later. I wasn't trying to reject you. I was trying to protect you. Gloria let out a quiet breath. From what? From waiting for someone who didn't know how to respond. A thoughtful silence settled gently between them. After a while, Gloria smiled faintly. We're not very good at talking when it matters most. Lucille smiled in return. No, we are not. We're surprisingly bad at it. Gloria laughed. So that's something we have in common. The waiter arrived with their meals, and the conversation shifted naturally to lighter things. They spoke about Gloria's law classes, Lucille's latest manuscript, and the novel Gloria had recently finished. Before long, they had lost track of time. More than once, Lucille caught herself wishing the evening would slow down. Across the table, Gloria found herself thinking the very same thing. The drive back was quieter than the journey to the restaurant. Streetlights slipped across the windshield in steady intervals. Every now and then, Gloria glanced out the window at the city passing by before her eyes drifted back toward Lucille. She looked calmer than she had in weeks. When they reached Gloria's apartment building, Lucille parked by the curb. For a moment, neither of them reached for the door. Thank you, Gloria said. I had a really nice evening. So did I. Lucille smiled. I'm glad you said yes. Gloria laughed softly. I almost didn't. Lucille's smile faded just enough for sincerity to take its place. I'm glad you changed your mind. Gloria nodded. Good night, Lucille. Gloria stepped out of the car, and Lucille waited until she disappeared through the entrance before pulling away from the curb. The roads were nearly empty by the time she reached the mansion. She walked through the front door, greeted the maid who was locking up for the night, and climbed the staircase without turning on the lights in the hallway. Her bedroom overlooked the garden. The lilies along the eastern fence were pale beneath the moonlight. She stood by the window for a long time. The dinner had gone well. Better than she had imagined. Gloria had smiled again. They had laughed together again. Yet something remained unfinished. Lucille rested one hand against the cool glass. Her thoughts drifted back through the past weeks. To the hallway where Alec had collided with Gloria. To the afternoon in her office. To Gloria quietly reading one of her novels. To the rainy evening, the diary, the balcony. The mornings Gloria could barely meet her eyes. Every memory seemed to lead to the same place. She had spent years believing that keeping her heart closed would spare her another heartbreak. Instead, she had watched herself become afraid of every feeling that mattered. She had nearly lost Gloria. The realization settled over her with surprising clarity. Love had never been the thing breaking her. Fear had. A quiet laugh escaped her. She shook her head at herself. She had written countless stories about people finding the courage to love. When it had become her own story, she had almost walked away from it. She didn't want to do that anymore. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Not when it was already so close to slipping through her fingers. Lucille picked up her phone. Her thumb hovered over Gloria's name only briefly before she pressed it. The call connected after the second ring. Hello. Gloria's voice was gentle, touched with surprise. Gloria, are you asleep? Not yet. Did something happen? Lucille looked out across the sleeping garden. May I come and see you? Gloria hesitated. Then she answered quietly, "Yes. I'll be there soon." Lucille ended the call. For the first time in a very long while, she wasn't running from what she felt. The streets were quiet by the time Lucille pulled up outside Gloria's apartment building. She sat behind the wheel for a moment with the engine idling. She had rehearsed countless versions of this conversation on the drive over. None of them felt honest anymore. She switched off the engine and stepped out. The evening air carried the cool scent of rain that had fallen earlier, leaving the pavement dark beneath the streetlights. By the time she reached the apartment door, she no longer knew what she intended to say. She only knew she could not leave things as they were. The door opened before she had a chance to knock again. Gloria stood there wearing a simple cardigan over the clothes she had worn to dinner. For a brief second, surprise gave way to concern. "Lucille, is everything all right?" Lucille nodded. "It will be." Gloria stepped aside without another question. The apartment was quiet. A lamp beside the sofa cast a warm glow across the room. 2 teacups sat on the coffee table. "I made tea," Gloria said. "I wasn't sure if you'd want any." "I'd like some." Gloria disappeared into the kitchen. The familiar sounds of a kettle and cupboard doors gave Lucille a moment to steady herself. She looked around the apartment. A novel rested open on the arm of the sofa. Beside it lay a law textbook covered in handwritten notes. Everything about the room felt lived in. It reminded her of the first time she had been forced to stay here because of the rain. She smiled faintly. That afternoon had changed far more than either of them had realized. Gloria returned with a steaming cup and placed it gently in front of Lucille before taking the seat opposite her. Neither woman reached for the tea. Gloria searched Lucille's face. "You've been thinking." "I have." "Since dinner?" Lucille nodded. "Since much longer than that." The room fell quiet. Lucille wrapped both hands around the warm cup. "I owe you an apology. When I read your diary, I wasn't frightened because of what you wrote." She looked down at the tea for a moment before meeting Gloria's eyes again. "I was frightened because I realized I wanted the same thing." Gloria's breath caught. Lucille continued before fear could interrupt her again. "I had spent so many years convincing myself that loving someone only ended one way." She gave a quiet, self-conscious smile. "It became easier to believe I didn't need love than to admit I was afraid of it." Gloria listened without moving. "The day on the balcony. I thought I was protecting you." "I know." Lucille shook her head gently. "I was protecting myself." Gloria lowered her eyes. For weeks she had imagined this conversation. None of those imagined versions sounded like the woman sitting in front of her now. Lucille leaned forward slightly. "I kept thinking that if I ignored what I felt, it would disappear." She smiled at herself. "It only made me miss you. I missed talking to you. I missed waiting for you to arrive. I missed hearing you laugh with Alec downstairs." Her eyes never left Gloria's. And somewhere in all of that, she drew a slow breath. "I fell in love with you." The room became perfectly still. "I love you, Gloria. I should have said it sooner. I just didn't know how." Gloria stared at her. For a moment, words refused to come. The weeks of uncertainty. Every memory seemed to fold into this single moment. A tear slipped quietly down her cheek before she could stop it. She laughed softly as she wiped it away. "I promised myself," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "that if you never felt the same, I'd let you go." She smiled through the tears. I was trying so hard to keep that promise. Lucille's heart tightened. I am sorry. Gloria shook her head. You don't have to apologize for needing time. She stood from the sofa and walked toward Lucille. When she stopped in front of her, neither of them spoke. Gloria reached out slowly and took Lucille's hand. I love you too. The words were quiet.
Certain.
Lucille closed her eyes for the briefest moment. Gloria's hand remained wrapped around Lucille's. Lucille looked at their joined hands and smiled. I've imagined this conversation so many times. Gloria laughed quietly. So have I. I'm relieved none of those versions actually happened. Why? Lucille looked up. In every one of them, I tried to sound composed. And now, I'm not. Gloria's smile widened. I like this version better. The tension that had followed them for weeks finally began to loosen. Not because every uncertainty had disappeared. Because neither of them was carrying it alone anymore. Gloria led Lucille to the sofa, and they sat side by side. Outside, the wind stirred the trees lining the street. The sound drifted faintly through the slightly open window before fading again. Lucille looked toward it for a moment. When I told you that things come and go. She shook her head. I wish I could take those words back. Gloria's expression softened. You don't have to. They brought us here. Lucille looked at her. I suppose they did. Gloria smiled. Besides, you said something much better tonight. Lucille raised an eyebrow. What was that? You said you'd fallen in love with me. A quiet laugh escaped both of them. Lucille reached up and brushed a loose strand of hair behind Gloria's ear with a tenderness that surprised even herself. I'm still learning. I know. And I probably won't get everything right. I won't either. Lucille nodded. For the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of tomorrow. Gloria's fingers intertwined with hers. We don't have to know what tomorrow looks like. We just have to meet it together. Lucille smiled. It wasn't a promise that life would always be easy. It wasn't a promise that they would never hurt each other. It was a promise that neither of them would face the future alone. Outside, the first light rain of the night began to fall. Lucille glanced toward the window and smiled. It looks like I'll have to stay until the rain eases. Gloria looked at the rain, then back at Lucille. For the first time, neither of them wished for it to stop too soon. Hand in hand, they watched the lights shimmer across the wet street, no longer wondering whether love was worth the risk.